Hi there and welcome to BPA training. In this video, we'll be focusing on working with claims within the billing portion of iPatient Care eCairo EHR. Now, if you haven't already, we first of all encourage you to watch our billing overview video that provides some helpful background to this whole billing process. Now, as you might imagine, at a high level, we start off with charges. Those charges are put into a claim. Then we take a number of claims and group them into a batch, which then can be sent electronically to the clearinghouse or printed to paper. If we go to our left-hand panel here and go under billing, we're going to be focusing on this claim subsection, and we have a number of options or areas we can start off with. And really, there are different ways to accomplish the same goal of getting claims and batches out of the system. However, we're going to show you mainly in this video the most efficient way, the quickest way to get claims and batches out. And to do that, we're going to start off by going into this batch list area. I actually have the batch list open here right now. And within this batch list area, we're going to see really a list of our existing batches that we have created. And you're going to notice the data that helps us to see some information about these batches as organized within these column headers. So you're going to see each batch is assigned a unique batch number. And one thing that's helpful to know is the higher that batch number, the newer it's going to be. And you can see we have a batch date, a description, where we're submitting to, the type of the batch. So E stands for electronic, P stands for paper. We can see when that was last submitted, the number of claims in the batch, any errors, the total charges of all the claims in that batch, and also the status of the batch as well. Further to the right, we have a couple buttons that'll be useful to us. We can add billing notes to a batch. Here under this Show Batch Detail button, we're going to be in that a lot. That's where we go to actually view the claims in the batch and work through them, work through any errors, and get them ready to send out. Further to the right, we have our Transmit button to be able to send electronic batches. Now, it's worth noting too that we can sort this data quite easily. So you'll notice this little purple triangle here under this batch number column header. And if I click that again, you're going to notice that triangle point the other way. And we're sorting our data currently by batch number. And by doing that, I'm actually now sorting where the oldest batches are at the top. And we can do that for any of these column headers. Click on them to sort in any order that we want to. In addition to sorting though, there's times where we actually want to filter our data. So if we only wanted to see, for example, batches that were in a pending status, ready to go out to the clearinghouse, we can use this orange bar here called Filter Criteria and create a filter to hide the data we don't want to see, the batches we don't want to see in this case, and just display what we want to see. So in that case, we have a number of different options we can select here, but in this case, I'll choose status, and it says equals, and we choose the status that we want to look for. So we'll say pending. If I hit this search button up at the top, it's going to apply that filter, and you'll notice now we only see our pending batches. What's really helpful here is we can see an indication that this filter is being applied when this is white, this icon. And we can save our templates or these filters as a template for future use. I can just simply hit this save icon and give this a name. In this case, I'll call it pending. I can actually now click on this orange bar again to hide that filter details. And you're going to notice right from this dropdown, I now have made my own template. Over at the right, we can reset this. So we're just showing the default view where it shows us everything. All of our statuses are batches in different statuses are showing up. But if we need to quickly revert back and just seeing our pending, we can click on that, and now that is all we see. So that'll be all the more helpful as we get to some other windows in our billing process with claims here today. Further to the right of that, besides the reset button, we can delete the current template, and we could also hit this trash can to delete all the templates we've made. Maybe we want to start over from scratch. It is worth noting that these templates are per user, so each user will need to individually set up their own templates that they need. All right, we're now at the point we actually want to make our own batch of claims. To do that, over at the right-hand side, we're going to go to this Visit button for the quickest way. We'll click on Visit, and this is going to show us all of the visits in the system that are tied to a doctor's note and that really have not been put on a claim yet. So it allows us to quickly find those new charges in the system and build them out. Now, one caveat to that is over at the right-hand side, you're going to notice the status column, which is really important because this indicates whether the doctor's note tied to this visit has been signed or unsigned. And as you can see in our list here, all of these say unsigned. The reason why we would not want to use these unsigned status visits is because if we build it out as it is now, it's kind of like a snapshot in time. We're taking that visit, and if the doctor went back into his note and actually added some additional billing information or charges, those charges would never leave. It would never actually get put into a claim because it thinks it's already been sent out. So what we want to do to help us avoid that, where we're missing potential charges, we don't want to work with unfinished or unsigned status. So we can actually, up at the top here under this filter criteria area, again make another template to make sure we're only seeing signed statuses. And actually I've already done that. I've made a few different templates, but the one I'm going to focus on right now here is signed with charges. If I click on that, you're going to see what that looks like. So I set signed equals, or status equals signed, and visit charge equals with charges, because of course we only want to send out visits that have a charge. You can add many levels to these filter templates by clicking these plus buttons after a line, and it simply adds criteria to your filter. So now when I do a search with that particular option selected, now you'll see we're just seeing those that have signed statuses, and indeed they also have charges. Because this is a demonstration environment, I'm actually going to go back just to the regular search here. And I'm going to pull in, I'm going to break my own rule. We're going to pull in some visits, even though they're not signed yet. But in this case, just for demonstration purposes, that's what we're going to work with. Now, this is pretty neat. When we're looking for visits in the system, these have not yet been put on a claim. So we can select these and as many as we want, and it will automatically make a batch for us. Something I also want to show you, though, is if you make multiple selections here, you're going to notice at the far right, we have different types. So these top two are electronic visits. Essentially, they should be sent out electronically. And these two have a P that, in general, the way the settings are, these should be made as paper claims. So I can actually select a mixture of paper and electronic claims. And at the bottom, hit Save. And you're going to notice at the upper right, it split those automatically into two batches for me. Two of those went into a paper batch and the other went into an electronic batch. Now real quick, I just want to go back into that visit area. And as I mentioned, we had a template signed with charges. Now that is good to work from this particular template, but it's also good to perhaps make some other templates as well, just to make sure you're not missing different charges over time. You could make one that just shows signed notes. So after billing out all of those or creating a batch with all of your signed with charges, if you go to signed, that should naturally show you those that are signed but do not have charges. Additionally, you could make a filter template that says with charges or without charges. And that will help you again to capture and make sure you're not missing any of the visits in the system and getting them billed out properly. Just thought I'd mention that real quick. But now if we go back to our list here of batches, as mentioned earlier, we had two batches created. From here, we can work our batches. So we have this electronic batch here, and I'm just going to click on this Show Batch Detail button so that we could work through those claims that were created in this batch. So here we are. We see those two claims that were created with those two charges within them, each individually, and they're now in this batch. Up above, we see some basic information. We could make some adjustments if needed. We even do have a button here to move the claim. We could switch it from electronic to paper if applicable. We could even bring in additional claims that were previously existing if we wanted to add more claims to the 2 that we have in our list. And we even have a transmit button. Once we're ready to send these out, that's what we can do there. Let's go through the normal process here, though, of once we have our batch open, we want to work these claims, check them over, make sure there's no problems with them. So to do that, we can highlight the claim like I've done here now and click on this Claim Details button. Okay, so once we have this claim up, we're going to have data up above that shows us the patient, claim number. We could make adjustments if we need to with the date or date of service. We have our place of service we can select and our visit type. One really helpful feature though for billers is this button off to the right called View Visit Summary. When we click on that button, we're actually opening up the doctor's note, and as a biller, we can compare to what we're working with behind this window to what is on the doctor's note. So if we need to adjust the billing in some way, we can review this and make sure that we're billing things out appropriately. We can also do an eligibility check by clicking on this link for the patient. We can see when it was last verified. We can look at the copay, the insurance carrier, and other data here too. It's also worth noting under billing profile, we might have a number of profiles set up depending on how we're billing claims out of the system. We may have different NPI numbers, tax ID numbers, that kind of thing. And we could actually group those into billing profiles and then change those on the fly when we're billing out claims. In this case, we're going to leave everything the way it is up above. Just down below, you're going to notice here's the visit information that we pulled again from the doctor's note. It has the the diagnostic codes. And we also have the procedure code off to the right here for the visit. Over here, we have some other options we could do. We could bring in additional codes if we needed to, add some lines here. We could save it once we've actually made any changes. Down below here, we can see what's patient responsible. We can see even recent patient payments. We can also click this button to see insurance responsibility and recent insurance payments. And over at the right, there's this little plus button. We can add in follow-up options, or actions rather. When we click that button, it allows us to put in different notes if we wanted to, a claim level note or a CPT level note. We can do that using the plus buttons over at the right. So essentially, as a biller, you're going to come in here, look at this information, make sure it matches with the doctor's note, make any adjustments you need to, and then at the bottom, once you've got everything the way you like it, you're going to look for any problems that the system internally has found to be in error. And you notice in this particular case, it is giving 2 errors. It actually detected that the fees are currently set to 0. And in this case, they are. We didn't actually have any fees associated with this particular one. So we'll just put in a fake dollar amount. And what's nice is once we have errors down here below and we correct any of those errors, we can hit this button at the bottom to check for errors. And once we've made those corrections, those errors will go away. It'll make sure that we've corrected them appropriately. And in most cases, it's good to work through those errors. Now, speaking of the fees, the billing fees, there's a drop down here I did miss. We can choose our fee schedule. So if we have different rates for fees, we could select a different fee schedule. We just don't have in this demo system charges assigned to different procedure codes. So in this case, I had to manually type it in. But in your system, no doubt that's going to be coming in as a default charge. Now at the bottom, previously, when there were errors, you might have noticed that this previously said here, pending with error. Once we corrected the errors, it went to pending for submission, which is ideally what we're looking for. So this status will update as well for us. Now it's important to, as mentioned earlier, to work through the errors. We're probably not going to see much under transmission error or acknowledgement error because we haven't yet sent this particular batch out. But once we do, we can review these to make sure there aren't any of those conditions. But then even after we send out a batch, we can come into this area and look under claim status response, and we may see some responses from the clearinghouse or insurance carrier provide those updates here. At the bottom, we have a claim data button. We can click on that. And this is really useful if you're familiar, especially with the HCFF 1500 forms. There's different boxes maybe you need to fill out, and you'll notice those are labeled here. So we got box 10. Maybe we need to relate an accident related to, and we could turn things on or off depending on that. We've got box 14, the date of current symptoms or illness. 454 over here for box 15, initial treatment date, and we can plug that in. And a number of these different boxes, 17, 16, 20, the local use boxes, ones you're no doubt familiar with from the HCFF 1500 form. So that's where we could fill in this information. We also have an additional data tab at the top, and we have some other dates that we could fill in, including the initial treatment date. So just know that that button's available, that claim data button. Further to the right, we got some other things we can do. We could view the billing analysis, the patient's ledger, attachments, and even print off this claim if we wanted to right at this stage. Now, in a nutshell, again, a biller is going to come in here, do their self-scrub, look it over, make sure everything is proper for this particular claim. And you're going to notice what's really nice is we have an arrow key at the bottom. Remember, we had 2 claims in this particular batch. So instead of going out of this window and then loading up or going into that second claim, we can just arrow over. And now we're all of a sudden into the next patient and the next claim. We can quickly work through this and make sure everything looks good. Again, as you can see here with this second one, we have, it says down at the bottom, pending with error. And again, we have errors, same kind of issue as before. We need to make sure we put in a charge. We'll put that in, do our claim check, and anything else as a biller that we would need to do to scrub this. And then we are done. We can hit OK here, and we're ready essentially to get this batch sent out. We can see it says pending for submission. At the upper right, we can actually hit this transmit button and begin the sending process. It'll send it out to the clearinghouse. Alternatively, if we back out of here, we can hit OK, and we see our batch here. Again, it's this second line, and we could hit this transmit button at this level or at this stage and send it on out. Okay, so now we can see it is ready to be sent. We just have a demonstration system, so this will automatically be picked up by the software and sent periodically, but it's going to stay in ready to submission electronically because again, this is a demonstration system. So that was the process for an electronic batch. We can also print out paper batches, and really it's a very similar process. We can go in and actually work the batch. Here again, we have those 2 paper claims. We could actually click on that claim details button, look it over, do our scrubbing. I'm just going to back out because we've already shown you all that. But once we got it the way we wanted, we could select this particular batch or even other batches. And at the upper right, we have a printer icon to print out paper claims. So we can select that printer icon. And in general, we're going to want to stick with the reports that show at the bottom half, the ones that say new in the name. And that refers to the newer HCFF 1500 forms, the ones that came out in 2012. We have the option of printing blank stationery, which would include the entire form for us. So if we just had plain white printer paper, it's going to include all the boxes in addition to the data inside the boxes, which is really helpful. If we were faxing this, we could even just print this using black and white toner because that's all they're going to see on the other side. So we could print this out as is. Alternatively, if we want to print, we can choose print preprint stationery, which means we have the red forms already and we're printing on those, and now you'll notice it's just going to print the data inside the boxes, not the whole form. So to summarize what we've done so far is we've come into this batch list area. We did a search for visits that were tied to doctor's notes that have not yet been put onto a claim. We made those into claims, which automatically got added to batches, which we then sent out. That's why working from this batch list area is so quick. Now we do also have the option, there's this plus button up here, which is called Create Batch. If we hover over it, we'll see that. That essentially does the same thing. If we go to Billing, Claim, Create Batch, both of those options or buttons do the same thing. And it's very similar to the process we just went through. We're essentially creating a blank batch and then have to manually go find the existing claims that are out there and add them to this batch. Or again, we can use this visit button to bring in doctor's visits from the notes. So it's just another way to work, but a little quicker when we start off from the batch list and use the visit button. Additionally, I did want to show you, if we go to billing and under claim, we can look at the claim list. So this area will show us all of the claims in the system, and that includes claims that were automatically created when we made a batch earlier. In fact, we can see those claims here at the top, and just like before, there's some unique things that's worth noticing. Under the claim number area, you'll notice each claim gets a unique claim number, and the higher that claim number is, the newer it is. We can click this little I button here and get some basic information on the claim if we need to quickly, some of the CPT code and more information. We can see the data service here though at a glance, how old it is, the insurance carrier, patient, and so on. Off to the right, we can again add billing notes if we need to. We can also see some of the history regarding this claim. But over at the right, this is going to be something we've already seen, but if we click on Modify Claim, it brings us into that same window where we were scrubbing claims earlier as part of the batch list sending process. So if we need to make changes, we can do that in here too. Now, if for some reason we needed to resend out a claim, or perhaps we want to print out a claim to paper just individually, not as part of a batch, we can come into this claim list area and place a check mark next to the claim we want to print and use the printer button at the top to select a form to use to print this particular claim out. Additionally, we could put the claim on a new batch if for some reason we need to do that. Maybe we need to rebill out a single claim that was previously part of a batch. The whole batch maybe got accepted except for one claim had a problem. If we need to resend that one out, from this area we can simply select that claim, and there's a button at the top here, Create Batch, that puts this particular claim on a new batch. Or we could select a number of them to do that, to put them all into a batch as well. Well, and finally, we want to make mention that you can send out a claim and create a claim really completely from scratch. To do that, at the upper right of the claim list area, we have a button here called Create Claim. Now that does the exact same thing off to the left-hand side under Billing Claim, Create Claim. That's the same thing as this button here. And it brings up the window. Again, we've seen this, but now we have to really fill it out completely. There's not a lot of data that comes in preloaded, so we have to load up the patient, select the claim date, we have to select the provider, add in the ICD-10 codes, the procedure codes. All of this we have to plug in, fill out manually, and then later create, once this claim is created, add that to a batch to get it sent out. So just know that it is possible, but hopefully you've seen that working through the batch list area, pulling in visits from the doctor's note is very quick, efficient, and an easy way to get many claims out in a short order. Well, that concludes this video. We hope that this deep dive into working with claims and batches has been helpful. Again, we thank you for watching.